I am Nico van Nimwegen. I'm the Secretary General and Treasurer of the IUSSP, and it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of our Council. And as most of you will know, we are the Worldwide Association of Population Experts. And if you're not yet a member, you should definitely consider to join us. It's very worth your while. And if you are an early career colleague, we have a very attractive student rate. Now, all of our activities are member-driven, and we have many. So just let me mention our scientific panels, of which we have 17 at the moment, who cover the whole wide field of population studies. And one of them is an early career panel. So we really cherish the inputs of the next generation of demographers in the activities of the IUSSP. And of course, we are organizing the International Population Conference, which are the Olympics of demography. And our next event will be next year, July 2025, in beautiful Brisbane, Australia. And this may be your once-in-a-lifetime chance to visit that beautiful country and our absolutely fantastic conference. The call for paper opens in May, so you still have time to prepare your presentations there. And we hope to definitely see you in Australia. Now, to the event of today, we are celebrating the first ever laureates of the IUSSP Early Career Awards. And I quote, "These awards were established in 2023 to acknowledge and honor outstanding contributions to the development of our discipline and the broad field of population studies by early career colleagues in the various regions of the world, and to boost their global visibility of their achievements. These awards are unique, and they are made through a collaboration between IUSSP and the regional population associations, including for Africa, the Union of African Population Studies, UAPS, for Asia and the Pacific, the Asian Population Association, APA, for Europe, the European Association for Population Studies, for Latin America and the Caribbean, the Latin American Population Association, ALAP, and for the North America, USA, Canada region, the Population Association of America. All these associations are part of the jury, and it's really a collaborative, a joint exercise that we are having. And we have granted one award per region. And now, without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to you, Shireen. Over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shireen Jijipal, and I am the current president of the IUSSP. I have the great pleasure of chairing this session. I just want to say a little bit about the award. Nico has talked about it. I think early career scholars in our field are rarely acknowledged, although the work they produced, if I may say so, is often as or more noteworthy than that of many more established scientists. The IUSSP is really proud to have initiated this award program that addresses this gap of not acknowledging this important group and honors the contributions of our next generation of scholars from each region of the globe. We received an enthusiastic response from our early career scholars, and this response signifies to me the need for and the importance of such an award, as well as the respect that IUSSP commands from early career scientists. The submissions we received were really excellent. Making final decisions was not easy. And so I congratulate all the more the three winners that are going to speak today, all five winners, but the three who are going to speak today. As Nico said, the initiative has been truly collaborative, engaging the participation of the various regional associations together with the IUSSP. I'd like to acknowledge all of their contributions to this initiative, so ably led by Nico. But most of all, I'd like to thank the early career scientists for the contributions they made and their enthusiastic participation in this program. So now let me turn the session over to Edith Gray, our council member from the Asia and Pacific region, to introduce Dr. Aude Bernard, the Early Career Awardee from the Asia Pacific region. Over to you, Edith.
Thank you, Shireen. Hello, I'm Edith Gray, one of the jury members for the Asia Pacific region, together with Professor Terry Hull, who I see is also in the audience today. It's my pleasure to introduce Aude Bernard, the recipient of the Early Career Award for the Asia Pacific region. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the extremely high caliber of the nominees for our region. They were all absolutely outstanding, with strong publication records, and they'd already made important contributions to their subfields of demography. Terry and I strongly encourage those who still meet the criteria in the next round to apply again. Our assessment of the applications was based on a number of criteria. Firstly, we ranked on the number and quality of publications, considering particularly the impact factor of the publications. Secondly, we considered grant successes. And thirdly, we considered more broadly the nominees' involvement in outreach to the field of demography, as well as other notable professional achievements. Based on that criteria, we ranked Aude Bernard first, noting that she was ranked first in all of the assessment criteria. Aude's an outstanding scholar. Her research lies at the cutting edge of the field of internal migration and straddles formal and social demography. Her methodological contributions include developing measurement and estimation techniques that facilitate large-scale international comparisons of the level of internal migration, their spatial patterns, and their selectivity. In some of her earliest research, she broke new ground in devising methods to smooth and compare migration age profiles, which are methods that have now been widely adopted by the discipline. Her recent research pioneers the shift from a period to a cohort perspective, supported by a robust suite of metrics. Aude's published in the most esteemed demography journals, including Demography, Population and Development Review, Population Studies, Population Space and Place. Her research leadership has been recognised through successful large-scale grant applications, invited presentations and consultancies, and she's involved in capacity building projects in the Asia Pacific region, as well as numerous examples of service to the discipline of demography. One that I'd specifically want to highlight is her involvement as co-chair of the IUSSP Lifetime Migration Scientific Panel, which has been an extremely active panel to date. I congratulate Aude on her career and achievements so far, and look forward to seeing her future contributions to the field of demography in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Edith, for the kind introduction. And good morning or good evening, depending on where you are, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the IUSSP for supporting ECRs through this inaugural awards. And I also would like to congratulate my fellow finalists, Heini, Chaimae, Raquel, and Amanda, for the great work. I'll share my screen with you now. And I'd like to use this opportunity to discuss ways we can collectively better integrate migration into demographic research. As you probably know, demographers have always been a bit ambivalent toward migration, and for a long time, migration was on the margins of demography compared with fertility and mortality. Now, as you can see on the red line on this graph, the proportion of articles published in demographic research in the field dedicated to migration has increased over time from about 5 to 10% in the 1950s, 70s to close to 25% today. But migration is still not the primary concern in demography. And at the same time, we've seen the number of migration studies published in social sciences outside demography increasing significantly, which is represented by the green bars. And so because of this, migration studies has emerged as a separate field of inquiry. And as a result, migration has moved away from its demographic roots. And that's potentially problematic because many papers today do not give full consideration to the difficulties of measuring migration. And so collectively as demographers, we have a key role to play in migration research. And to do this, we should aim to better integrate migration into demographic research. And today I'd like to briefly show you 3 ways we can do this. The first one is through deeper theoretical integration to our main theoretical framework, which is the demographic transition. And as you all know, originally it incorporated only fertility and migration. Now, there's been efforts by many scholars to integrate migration into the demographic transition while recognizing the diversity of migration transitions. But something that's often overlooked is that at early stages of the demographic transition, the level of internal migration is volatile and can vary significantly from one year to the next, which you can see here for South Korea in the 1950s and 70s. And even today in a country like Mongolia that has a more agrarian economy. And these variations you see for Mongolia are linked to very harsh winters that destroy livestock and cause large rural to urban migration flows. And that's something that hasn't been looked into enough details, particularly today among less developed countries. There's also an opportunity for us as demographers to better integrate internal migration to the second demographic transition, particularly in the context of the decline in the level of internal migration that we've seen in many developed countries, including particularly Anglo-Saxon countries. Now, many authors have linked these declines to increased divorce rates, an increase in dual income families, but very few researchers have explicitly linked these migration trends to the second demographic transition. And I think there's an opportunity to theoretically enhance these links. The second way we can better integrate migration into demographic research is through methodological cross-fertilization by adopting methods from different subfield of demography. And so in this case, we applied parity progression ratios from the fertility literature to migration to understand how people transition from one migration to the next over the life course, which has been made possible by increased data availability. Now, on this graph, as an example, you can see for 27 European countries, the association between the mean age at leaving the parental home on the x-axis against the number of migrations throughout adulthood on the y-axis. And you can see a clear negative association. So in countries in the south and the east of Europe, where we see a late departure from the parental home and very few migrations in adulthood, whereas we see the reverse in the north and west of Europe, just in the same way that we see, that age at first birth influence progression to the second parity, we see something similar for migration. In the second graph here, we're looking at the age at the first adult migration for 3 countries against the probability to migrating for a second time. And you can see, again, a very clear negative association. And this shows the strong link between the age structure of migration and the overall level of internal migration, which serves to explain variations between countries and over time in the level of migration. And this is just one example of how we can employ methods from other subfields of demography to generate new insights. The third way we can better integrate migration into demography is by focusing on cross-cutting themes that are of interest to fertility, migration, and mortality. An obvious topic is climate change. But today I'm giving you another example, and that's the intergenerational transmission of demographic behaviors. We've known for a long time, and there's a lot of research on parent-to-child similarity of marriage, fertility, and divorce behavior. But research on parent-to-child transmission of migration is much more limited. And so on this graph here, you can see the odds of migrating in adulthood as a function of the number of internal migration in childhood. And you can see that kids who've been exposed to internal migration are more likely to migrate independently once they're adult, which suggests that perhaps kids learn some skills when they migrate with their parents and they can deploy in adulthood. On this second graph, we're looking at the impact of the number of international migration as a child on the probability to migrate once you're an adult, both internally and internationally. And again, you can see this association that kids who migrated internationally are more likely to migrate internally once they're adults, which suggests that something critically happened in childhood when kids are exposed to migration. So this led us recently to work on the concept of migration capital. And we propose that children acquire migration capital through their family migration history, but also through their own migration experience as a child. And we tested this empirically by looking at the probability to migrate internationally as an adult for different migrant generations in Europe. What you can see here, the green line at the top, these are people who were born, the third generation and over, people who were born in Europe to parents born in Europe, and they have a very low probability of emigrating. You see in the black line, the second generation migrants who were born in the country, but their parents were born overseas, have a higher probability to immigrate, which suggests that the migration history of their parents matter. But what's more important is the blue and the red line. The blue line is your 1.5 generation who was born overseas and migrated to Europe as a child, and they have a higher probability to immigrate later in life. But more importantly, the red line is your, what we call the 2.75 generation. So kids who were born in Europe, to parents born in Europe, but emigrated overseas while they were children and then came back during their childhood. And they have the highest propensity to immigrate, which suggests that there is a process of intergenerational transmission that's happening. So these are just very brief examples to show you how we can work towards a deeper integration of migration into demographic research to ensure that migration remains true to its demographic roots. Thank you.
Thank you, Aude, for really giving us a very good idea about how migration can be integrated in such a new way. A really insightful presentation. And now for my most pleasant task, Aude, it gives me great pleasure on behalf of IUSSP to award you this Early Career Award for 2023 for Asia and the Pacific. The award recognizes and celebrates your remarkable contribution, and I'm sure many of us look forward to following your career over the years. So congratulations, Aude, and I hope there'll be time to discuss your really interesting presentation later. Okay, so it's now time for our second award. So let me give the floor to Nico again, council member from the European region, to introduce our second awardee, Dr. Heini Väisänen.
Thank you, Shireen. It's really a big honor for me to introduce Heini to all of you. I'm doing this on behalf of the jury. The jury members for Europe were Jane Falkingham and Albert Esteve. Also in Europe, like as was the case in Australia and the Pacific, the jury commented that there was a very high quality set of people that were nominated for the Early Career Award. And they had a difficult choice to make, but they were, again, unanimous in selecting Heini for the first ever Early Career Award for the region of Europe. And Heini is a tenured researcher at the French Institute for Demographic Studies, INED. She, according to the jury, and we all agree, is an exceptional early career researcher whose research and career have gone from strength to strength since her PhD in demography from the London School of Economics. Her research output is impressive, substantial, with publications in top journals. Heini has tackled under-researched areas in high and low-income countries, which is exceptional, and has worked in interdisciplinary groups from different institutions. Through her work on abortion, she has gained a network of international colleagues both in Europe, the United States, and in Africa. Her most recent research addresses methodological and substantive questions around social inequalities that expose women to the risk of miscarriage and its adverse consequences. Heini was recently awarded a prestigious European Research Council starting grant, which also acknowledges her rising profile, the quality of her work, as well as her international networks. In the view of the jury, Heini is one of those rare researchers who applies advanced statistical methods without losing sight of the policy implications and the impact of the results. So it's with very great pleasure that we have awarded the European chapter of the IUSSP Early Career Awards to you, Heini. Congratulations, and we hope indeed to see much more of your work. And now over to you. Thank you.
So much for those kind words. Let me share my screen. So thank you so much for having me here. I was given the task of saying something about my research in about 10 minutes. So I will just focus on the kind of three main research interests that have inspired me so far in my career and where those have taken me. I will start with the kind of very short CV saying kind of where I came from and where I am right now. And then in the end, I will say a few words of thank you. So as Nicole mentioned, I got my PhD from LSE in 2016. The title of my thesis was A Life Course Perspective to Abortion in Finland. Then after that, I worked as a lecturer at the University of Southampton, 5 years full-time, and then a couple of more years part-time. Since December 2020, I've been working at INED as a researcher, and as of this January, as mentioned also by Nico, I'm the PI of an ERT starting grant entitled Social Inequalities in the Risk and Aftermath of Miscarriage. And I will say a few words of all of those things in my presentation. So in terms of my studies, what I did in my undergrad and in my MSc and PhD studies, I studied sociology, demography, quantitative methods and statistics, as well as feminist studies. And all of these 4 elements I've tried to always engage in my work ever since. So in terms of my first MSc dissertation and second MSc dissertation as well, it seemed to me like a good idea to study abortion because it was a topic that I was able to combine something that was relevant for demography because it has obvious impacts for fertility. I could use quantitative methods. It was a topic that was relevant for many studies, and I could engage the social inequality aspect that has always been important to me, which is also a sociological topic. So this is my MSc dissertation, which was published, which looked at social inequalities in teenage fertility outcomes with 3 birth cohorts in Finland, where I was basically looking at how social background affects the likelihood of choosing an abortion or giving birth as a teenager. Then in my PhD, I looked at various different aspects of abortion in Finland, but here are a couple of examples of the social inequality side. So I've looked at, for instance, how education is associated with the likelihood of having an abortion over time, over the life course in 3 cohorts of adults in Finland. And then I was also looking at trajectories over the life course and how the timing of abortion, births, and union dissolutions link together in Finland. My interest in feminist studies as well as quantitative methods is also taking me to a wonderful research collective called FemQuant, which is a network of researchers who are interested in these 2 topics and combining feminist theories with quantitative research. In case you're interested in it as well, please take a look at our website. The second research interest that has been important to me since the beginning is the kind of role of context, broadly speaking. So that could mean the role of structures or society and how they affect reproductive behavior. It could mean place of residence. So it could be like the more local context, its deprivation levels, access to healthcare, and how all of that then plays out with sexual and reproductive health outcomes. Sometimes it can be the context of someone's life. So it could be one's socio-demographic characteristics and how they interact with their, again, sexual and reproductive experiences, or how they interact within an individual and how those then multiply and have effects, again, in one's behavior. And a third theme within the kind of context idea is the link between life course events and sexual and reproductive health. So not only looking at things cross-sectionally, but looking over time. So I will give you a couple examples of these kind of context papers. So first of all, looking at life course trajectories, I've been interested in things like whether the number and timing of having children is associated with different outcomes, like depression later in life in England, or whether women's pregnancy outcomes, including also abortions and miscarriages, are linked with physical health outcomes after reproductive years are over in Indonesia. Or sometimes I've taken a more macro view of looking at cross-country comparison in order to say something about the country context. So here is one example of such a study where we looked at 12 countries, and we were interested in seeing what women do if they have an unintended pregnancy. So do they have an abortion or do they give birth, and what kind of individual and contextual level variables are associated with those decisions. The third thing that has always been important to me, or it's kind of, maybe it hasn't been important to me, but it's happened to be at the core of what I study, are methodological challenges. So everything that I've ever studied is always underreported in surveys, especially in quantitative studies. So that goes for abortion, where there's a lot of stigma around the event and people don't really want to talk about it. In a lot of countries, abortions are illegal as well, which means that we don't even have any healthcare records of abortions. And even in countries where abortions are legal, often we don't have very good healthcare record data. There are a few exceptions, like Finland and other Nordic countries, which is why I, for instance, conducted my PhD looking at Finnish data. Unintended unwanted pregnancy, also there's also lots of complicated issues there in terms of stigma, as well as recall problems and not wanting to report, an existing child as unwanted. And then my most recent research interest was miscarriage, which is, if you can believe, even worse reported than abortion, because it's also stigmatized, also underreported in surveys, but we don't get very good healthcare records in any country, including the Nordic countries. So that is what I'm going to tackle next. Sometimes it's not only the event that's underreported, but also the populations that we want to study are hidden. So this is especially the case, for instance, for abortion. If abortion is legal in a country, it's very difficult to find people who experienced that event. So all of this brings measurement challenges. So here is an example of such a hidden population. So a few years ago, I collaborated with people at Guttmacher Institute and various Nigerian institutions, and we wanted to study women who had medication abortions in Lagos. And we, even though abortion is illegal in Nigeria, you can still get misoprostol, which is used to induce an abortion, from drug sellers. So we went to those drug sellers and asked them to recruit women so that we could say something about their experiences having abortions. And then there is the upcoming SOCMICS project, which will tackle the problems with miscarriage. So we will start by looking at how to improve quantitative methodologies that are used to study miscarriage, because it is underreported in basically all the data sources that we have. We will triangulate data sources. We will apply new methodologies to try and figure out how many miscarriages there really are and who is experiencing them. Then we will examine the social inequalities in the risk of having one, as well as the consequences, health consequences of miscarriage. And we will also take a context view by comparing the results between 3 countries and within the countries. And those countries are Finland, France, and the UK. So I would like to thank IUSSP for the award, as well as various colleagues, supervisors, and support letter writers that have helped me get there, and friends and family who have also been very important throughout my journey. And in case you would like to hear a bit more about my research, feel free to contact me or look at my website or the website of the SOCMICS project. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Heini. It was lovely to see the trajectory of your life and the kinds of interests you have and the wonderful work you've produced. So congratulations for the award. And it's really a privilege and a pleasure on behalf of the IUSSP to award you this Early Career Award for 2023 for Europe. And here's a copy of the award. We recognize and celebrate your remarkable contributions and look forward to following your career in the future. So thank you very much, Heini. Now we turn to Africa, and it's my pleasure to give the floor to Nkechi Owu, council member, to introduce Dr. Chaimae Drioui, our Early Career Awardee from Africa. So over to you, Nkechi.
Thank you very much, Shireen. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Nkechi Owu, and I'm an associate professor of economics based at the Department of Economics at the University of Ghana. As Shireen said, I'm also the current Africa representative on the IUSSP's Governing Council and was a member of the Early Career Awards Jury Committee. Now, I'm most pleased to introduce Dr. Chaimae Drioui as the winner of the Early Career Researcher Award for the Africa region. Now, despite the very competitive applications received from other candidates on the continent, Dr. Drioui stood out for a number of reasons. First, her scientific publications and academic citizenship in the short time following the completion of her doctoral program are commendable and highly indicative of her passion and commitment to the field. Secondly, as the first PhD holder in demography in Morocco, Dr. Drioui's work on fertility preferences, migration, gender inequality, and women empowerment in Morocco, as well as the MENA regions, promises to extend what is known about demographic outcomes in these areas. She is well placed to further the discipline in important ways. Her desire and ability to connect and engage with both local and international stakeholders within the scientific community is worthy of every support. By this award, we recognize her efforts and commitment and wish her every success in her future endeavors, be it on the continent or elsewhere. Congratulations, Dr. Drioui.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this kind words. So I will share my my screen, and I'm very pleased to. I'm very delighted and pleased to receive this award. And I want to thank once again the IUSSP and the other committee members for selecting me as Early Career Award in Africa. So I will briefly present my professional career before moving to my research projects. I am an engineer in statistics and demography and a PhD in demography, graduated from the National Institute of Statistics and Applied Economics in Morocco. And actually, I'm a postdoc at Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. So during my PhD, I published a certain number of papers, especially about the impact of women's empowerment on fertility levels and fertility preferences, and also the gap between the two compounds so as to understand the women's ability to achieve their desired number of children. I had also the opportunity to share and present my results in different national and international conferences. So, as I mentioned, my PhD project focused on fertility question, a CAPS issue that is based on gender relationships between the two partners involved. However, few studies have focused on gender inequalities and their impact on fertility challenges and observed areas. So I will briefly present my So in the Moroccan context, the decline in fertility has been rapid and sustained, where we have gone from 7 children per woman in 1962 to 2.4 today, according to the last survey of 2018. And moreover, this fertility transition has been accompanied by a decline in ideal family size, and fertility levels are today below the ideal number of children. So as in most developing countries, the proximate factors have played a major role in this fertility transition, especially the significant decline in the average age at first marriage for women and men, which has remained stagnant for almost a decade at around 25, 26 for women and 31, 32 years for men. And secondly, the increasing use of contraception has taken over birth control, with nearly 3 out of 4 women using a contraceptive method in 2018. Also, access to rights for Moroccan women has strengthened over the decades, and their social status has significantly improved. So the aim of my PhD project was to investigate whether the women's empowerment impacts their fertility levels and fertility preferences. And also, as couples are not always able to achieve their fertility ideals, when in fact reached levels often deviate considerably from the expressed preferences. This study also examined whether women's empowerment have an impact on their ability to achieve their desired number of children. So to answer these research questions, we used data from the National Population and the Family Health Surveys conducted in Morocco in 2004-2011. And we have then explained 3 fertility outcomes. Firstly, fertility level, which is measured by the number of children born alive. Fertility preferences, measured by the ideal number of children, and actual ideal gap, which is the difference between the number of surviving children and the ideal number of children. In terms of explanatory variables, our key variable is the Women's Empowerment Index, which is measured using a similar approach to that used by Ewoli and al. And it takes into account several dimensions, especially the women's attitudes towards domestic violence, participation in decision-making, discussion within couples about fertility projects, mobility freedom, and also social independence. Other control variables are also included in our analysis, especially the place of residence, the weight index, and also the husband's ideal number of children compared to that of the woman. We used, after that, different statistical analysis, especially exploratory to measure the Women's Empowerment Index, and also explanatory through different statistical models, depending on the type of the dependent variable. So here for the analysis of fertility levels and fertility preferences, we used the generalized Poisson model, and for actual ideal gap. And as this indicator, it's a difference between 2 variables with a Poisson model or Poisson distribution. We use scalar migration model to analyze this gap in its quantitative form and go beyond studies that have used this indicator in a binary form. So now moving to the significant findings, I will just summarize all these statistical tables. Overall, it appears that as women become more empowered, their fertility levels decrease with along their fertility preferences, and this result seems to be significant and holds true for both surveys. However, and as this factor acts in the same direction on both compounds of the gap, and with almost the same strength, the gap is everywhere and non-significant, regardless of women's level of empowerment. So it means that women who are highly empowered have typically lower fertility rates and lower fertility preferences, and so resulting for a smaller gap between their actual number of children and ideal number of children. And conversely, women with a low level of empowerment are more likely to have greater fertility rates and the greater desire for children, leading also to a smaller gap. So to conclude, and knowing that high fertility generally has a negative impact on women's reproductive health, this study showed that in Morocco, women's empowerment contributes significantly to a simultaneous reduction in both fertility and fertility ideal, and indirectly to reinforcing the ability not to exceed the ideal number of children. And improving women's status through access to educational and economic resources will enable them to participate in decision-making and achieve social independence by breaking away from traditional social norms that have a negative impact on their health and establishing more egalitarian bargaining relationships between spouses. So finally, for ongoing projects, I keep working on fertility and reproductive health issues with a focus on women's empowerment and other related approaches, trying also to extend the context study to other African countries. But the main project in which I'm currently involved in focuses on male fertility around the world with Bruno Schumacher at Catholic University of Leuven. So as male fertility is a relatively understudied area of research compared to female fertility, our first objective is to get a picture of the state of scientific knowledge about this topic to facilitate the conduction of future research, especially focusing on methodological aspects. Secondly, we aim to establish a worldwide database on male fertility to provide accurate estimates on of the main demographic indicators, allowing for comparisons with women's fertility, female fertility, sorry, and also an international level. And finally, we seek to develop a new methodological approach to estimate male fertility patterns by leveraging data on female fertility. So that's it. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Chaimae. That's very interesting. Very interesting to me, particularly. I work in the same areas. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking forward to more work from you. Another very thoughtful presentation. Again, it's time for me to give the award. It's a privilege for me on behalf of IUSSP to present Chaimae with this Early Career Award for Africa 2023. We recognize and celebrate your remarkable contributions and know we'll be seeing more exciting work from you in the future.
Thank you.
So thank you. So now we've just heard these three stimulating talks from three different regions of the world. And we have a few minutes now. Paul will tell us when our time stops to open the floor for discussion to members of the audience, for people to say a few words about our awardees and or ask questions. We have a few people who would like to speak, who've given us their names. So may I start with Martin Bell? Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Shireen. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak about this. First, can I say that I think this is an extraordinarily welcome initiative on the part of the IUSSP. You know, it's at this sort of starting point of people's careers that they need encouragement. You know, we tend across life to reward people at the end of their careers, which might be very nice, but they don't really need it. When people need encouragement is when they're starting out. They need to understand that their work is recognized, and this helps very greatly in that. It's also very good for people who are at the end of their careers, like myself, to be able to say, wow, that's a fabulous legacy, when some of these people are our former students, and you actually should be very pleased that they are evidently well surpassing the kind of work that we were doing, certainly at their age, and probably, most recently towards the end of ours. So I'd like to start by just congratulating, all of the awardees. I am much more familiar with Aude Bernard's work than I am with the others, but I listened with great intent to all of that material, and congratulations to all. I wanted to make 3 observations about this sort of work, which I think emanates, in a sense, from my knowledge of Aude Bernard's work, but in fact applies in principle to all 3 of the speakers. The first is that it seems to me that they are all making, and this is very important in demography, contributions to theory. In Aude's case, she's talking about the first and second demographic transitions and drawing attention to parallels there, which are quite important, I think. Also, but though her work is introducing new ideas, one of which is this notion of migration capital. Now, this has been toyed with before, but this is very novel to have this put forward in a substantive way, and importantly, with very strong links to sister disciplines, to sociology, to economics, to psychology. And I think this behoves demographers very well to be able to make those linkages across disciplines. So the theoretical contributions in all cases are important here and are fundamental to advancing demography. The second, of course, is about methods. And, we are a methodologically driven discipline in so many ways. Aude's work, and I think the other speeches that we have heard, build very much on life course perspectives here. And the contribution that Aude has made in terms of understanding the timing of migration and the frequency of migration is characterized by 2 things. One of them is that none of our speakers were afraid to actually introduce new measures. When I was in demography, that was something you didn't dare do. It was all out there in Schreier and Siegel, and you better just pick the right page and quote the formula correctly. And now we're beyond that, and we have people introducing very important, very valuable measures. And in Aude's case, there's a whole suite of measures which, in fact, capture migration frequency and intensity using data that is individually based. And this is my third point, that what we see here again is people not being afraid to link aggregate data to individual data. So much of the focus now, whether it be register data or surveys that people are collecting themselves, is capturing individual level data, great surveys now across the world that simply weren't there 20 years ago. And not only are they exploiting those and showing us new ways of thinking about things, but linking those to the aggregate measures which have been there. So no longer is this a choice. No longer is this are you using aggregate data or individual data? The real challenge which is being met is to put the 2 together and show how they relate. That's a major step forward in what we do. And finally, let me just talk about substantive results. Ultimately, by Joe Public out there who try to fund us and try to read what we write, what they're fundamentally interested in is not the theory, it's not the methodology, it is the policy relevance and planning relevance, the substantive output from what we do. And in each of these cases, I think all 3 of the scholars who have presented today have not only adopted a global focus, but they have demonstrated that work that they're actually doing has direct contributions to the way in which the world works. And that's the kind of contribution that demography really ought to be making, and I think demonstrably is. Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you, Martin. Next person on our list is Geraldine Dute, who is also a council member. Geraldine, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So I'm council member, but it's as a co-head of the demography of the Global South Research Unit at INED, then I'm speaking today. Even though I'm really happy to be here also as a council member, because I'm really glad we have this Early Career Awards from IUSSP, and I think it's really a great new event we should ensure in the future. So I would like to, maybe Martin told a lot about what I wanted to say about this new generation of researchers, and especially their capacity to tackle so many different dimensions, like from the methodological perspective or substantive questions, but also from the case of Heini to work as well on high-income countries, but also low-income countries in Europe and Africa, having some different perspective at local levels, but also global levels, which is quite interesting. And in the same time, having also a research which is involved in the society, involved in the sense of having policy implication, having some papers towards the funding and policy makers and so on, but also involved as a researcher to be engaged in the way we see research and how we conduct our research, and especially I think about the involvement of Heini in the FemQuant research network, with the feminist network, but also we have a lot of thoughts today about working on colonialist perspective and so on. So decolonialize, how to decolonize our research. So I know Heini is really a motor in this reflection, and I'm really happy to have her around at INED. And I would like to say also that with all this dimension and their ability to connect all this research, I would like to say also that they are really, in the case of Heini, but I'm pretty sure it's the case for the three of them, is that it's also a great pleasure to interact with them in work, and they're involved and enthusiastic, and so this is really nice for us to have them around, and I'm really happy they have this award today. Thank you.
Jalal?
Yes, Shireen. Let me also thank the IUSSP for this excellent idea of awarding early career researchers who have made great contributions to the field. It is really, as Martin said, it's timely, and there are many challenges that these early award careers and also scholars will be taking in the future, and I'm sure demography discipline will be enriched in the next decade or so by the contribution of these excellent colleagues who've been awarded. They have really made a great contribution, and as Martin and others said, the ideas that they pursued, the methodology and the theoretical framework that they brought to different areas and sub-disciplines of demography, I think is important, vital, and timely. And also the topics that they covered represent the challenges that every region is facing. Interestingly, migration is a global topic, and also the idea that we heard from Africa, fertility decline, women's empowerment, and also abortion in low fertility settings and many other settings. So both they covered global and regional issues that is, I think, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Can I,
Then,
Shireen,
sorry.
can I
Yeah,
just
please,
say,
Ankit.
yeah. Thank you so much to IUSSP for celebrating the success of early career researchers. And I just wanted to share how it matters a lot to the IUSSP Early Career Perspective panel also, because in the initial meeting, Nico and I remember the Secretariat asked the Early Career Perspective panel how to go with it. So it was very important decision for the Early Career Perspective panel also, and it was really inspiring that how they took the panel members' suggestion to have awardees from each region of the world, and I think it's first time we have done it. So it was really inspiring, and I hope these awards will, and the awardees' work will inspire so many early career researchers across the world. So thanks a lot. Congratulations to all too.
Thank you. Okay, so we have two additional awardees, as you know, who couldn't be with us because it's really early in the morning for them. They will join us in 3 hours for another session that we'll do for North America and Latin America. But they have sent a short video of themselves and their achievements. And I invite you to stay on a few minutes to take a look at their video. So you get a full picture of the 5 awardees from across the globe.
Dear IUSSP community, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Raquel Zanatta Coutinho, an assistant professor at the Demography Department at CEDEPLAR, located at the Federal University of Minas Gerais in Brazil. Over the past 7 years, I have been very busy teaching courses both at the graduate and undergraduate levels, and also mentoring students who are writing their PhD dissertations, master thesis, and senior thesis. I have also dedicated most of my time to researching fertility transitions and their social determinants. Since 2016, I have been following the impacts of the Zika epidemic and most recently the COVID-19 pandemic in Brazil, and I have been able to demonstrate how these events model reproductive behavior and disturb the availability and access to sexual and reproductive health services. In the last couple of years, driven by my students' interests, my research started to focus on maternal health and female mortality, including quality of prenatal care, maternal mortality, and domestic violence. I currently coordinate the Working Group on Fertility, Behavior, and Sexual and Reproductive Health of the Brazilian Population Association. As we prepare to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the International Conference on Population and Development of 1994, we reflect on how far Brazil has come in terms of healthcare and contraceptive access. However, we still deal with pervasive gender violence, unwanted pregnancies, stagnant maternal mortality ratios, and abortion prohibitions. This means I will probably continue to be very busy in the decades to come. I have too much to say, but I want to use this opportunity to thank all the wonderful people who have opened the doors for me, such as my previous mentors and advisors, and also my brilliant colleagues and scholars who have endorsed my application to this award. I also thank my students for helping me make a change in the world. Last, I want to thank my friends and family, especially my parents, husband, and children, who have been my endless source of support throughout the years. That's all for now. I hope to see you at the International Population Conference in Brisbane.
Hello, and thank you to the IUSSP. My name is Amanda Jean Stevenson, and I'm from the United States of America. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, where I'm in the Department of Sociology and the Institute of Behavioral Science. I received my PhD in sociology with a demography specialization from the University of Texas at Austin, and I received a bachelor's degree in computer science and mathematics from the Evergreen State College. I teach and mentor undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate students in statistics, demographic methods, causal inference, and reproductive health, as well as gender. I'm fortunate to be part of a team who offered an abortion demography workshop at the Institute of Behavioral Science for the first time in December of last year. I'm a family planning policy evaluator, and I'm only able to do this work because I was part of the Texas Policy Evaluation Project led by my mentor, Joseph Potter, at the University of Texas at Austin, at which we evaluated the impacts of radical restructuring of access to contraception and abortion services in the state of Texas in the United States, which began in 2011. When I came to the University of Colorado, I brought this commitment to evaluating the impacts of state policy in the United States to our state, Colorado, which had recently expanded access to contraception as opposed to the reductions in access that we had experienced in Texas. The Colorado Fertility Project, which is a collaboration that I lead with many colleagues across disciplines and across levels of seniority, largely more senior than me, is an effort to evaluate the long-term life course impacts of increases in access to contraception in our state. And we've been able to partner with the U.S. Census Bureau to produce the first longitudinal individual level record of the demographic lives of nearly all U.S. residents. We call this data set the Reproduction in People's Lives data, RIPL RIPPLE, and we're grateful to offer the opportunity for other researchers to use the infrastructure that we have built. We're also fortunate to be able to apply demographic methods to other policy relevant questions. Formal demography offers many tools which allow us to investigate extremely important questions which are otherwise intractable in the United States, particularly regarding abortion and differences in measurement across states. My colleagues, teammates, and mentors have been the only way that I've been able to do the work I have done, some of whom are pictured here, and I'm very grateful for all of their contributions to our discipline and to the conversations that we are all engaged in. I communicate the results of my research to the media, both through helping reporters report more accurately, as well as through op-eds myself. Thank you to the IUSSP, my colleagues, and my mentors, as well as to the many demographers who have developed the rigorous frameworks that our discipline brings to the contested topics that are at the center of our lives.
So I hope that's tempted those of us who will be in an acceptable time zone to attend the next awards. So now it's time to close the session, but do join again later on in 5 hours to hear more from Raquel and Amanda. So thank you all for attending, and thank you again and congratulations to our early career scientists and speakers for spending this time with us. Thank you and bye.